Today we'll build tabs or tab layout. Here you can see this is its default page view. When we load the page, this is what we see. First tab is active and first tab content is here. Now we click here, the content will change and tab gets this default state. Okay, this is highlight state. Okay, now this one, see, this is the project and it has some responsive look as well. When you minimize this one, see, this is how they look. Okay, it is max width 700 I gave to mobile. If you drag more than 700, see, this is how they look. And this is desktop look. Okay, with the margin left and right. Okay, this is the project and let's go and build this one. I'm in Visual Studio Code Editor. I have three files, index.html, style.css and app.js, which are all empty now. First we'll write HTML. Go to HTML file, here exclamation mark, hit enter, which gives basic markup. Now change type title. Now link CSS file, that is style.css. Finally link JavaScript file. Here I'll create a comment, Ctrl/2 comment. Now inside body tag, I'll create a main container which contains all our elements. For that, use div and class name container. Inside this container, I'll create another container which holds all buttons. Okay. Later we'll make them to look as a tabs. Div buttons container. This is the class name. Inside this, we'll create three buttons with the class name tab button, and text is tab 1. Another two buttons with the class name tab button. Last button with class name tab button, and text is tab 3. After this, buttons container will create three divs. Whenever we click one button, that div should be appeared and remaining two should be hidden. Okay, I'll close this head tag. Now div, I'll give a class name to access this div inside JavaScript and style file, and ID I'll give also. I'll tell you why I'm giving ID later. Now class name is tab content for each div, and ID is tab 1. Inside this div, we'll create h2 tab 1. Later some random text, lorem 20 characters, 20 words. After this div, another div with the class name tab content and ID tab 2 and h2 tab 2. Later some random text, this time 30 words. Finally last div with the class name tab content and ID tab 3. Inside this h2 tag tab 3, 40 words this time. Okay, now you see we have three buttons. Whenever we click one button, one div should be visible, another two should be disappeared. Okay, and I gave some IDs to this divs. Okay, here go to buttons. Here we'll create a custom attribute. For that I'm using data dash. This is a keyword. Okay, we can't change this one. Just write like this. Later whatever name you want to give to your attribute, give it. Here I'm giving ID. Okay, now value is tab 1. See, I'm giving values of this div IDs. Okay, div tab 1 like this. Later I will tell you how to access this custom attribute inside our JavaScript and what we are doing with this ID names. Okay. For now, to create a custom attribute, use data dash, later whatever name you want to give, you can give the attribute name and value. This is the easiest way to access inside JavaScript. Okay, later I'll explain it. Now second one is data ID and give second div's ID, that is this one, tab 2. Finally last button, data ID equals to the last div ID, that is tab 3. That's it for now, and save this file. And I'm using live server. Right click here, open with live server. See our buttons, 3 buttons and 3 divs here. Whenever we click one button, one div should appear, remaining 2 should be invisible. Now what we'll do, we'll style our page. Go to editor, here right click and split right and activate this window, clicking somewhere and select style file. Okay, now close this file window, Ctrl B to close. First I'll give some basic styles. Now we'll style our main container, that is this one, container. We'll give it some max width. Then when we are on bigger screens, our elements will not stretch. Max width, I'll give him 1400 pixels and margin top and bottom 0, left and right auto. Now save this one, let's go and check. See, this is the margin I gave, left and right. Okay, go back to editor. Now we'll style this buttons container. We'll make it as a flex container. Display flex and flex direction row. By default it is row, whether you specify this or not, but for clarity I am giving it here. Row means our elements will be placed one after another on a horizontal line. Now we'll give some bottom margin to this buttons container. Margin bottom 20 pixels. Let's go and check. Now we got some margin. Now we'll style these buttons, okay, to occupy this full width. For that we give class name tab button to each button. First width 100%. Then each button occupy the available space, and padding all sides 10 pixels and font size 22 pixels and background color I'll give some dark ash color. Now let's go and check. See, this is how they look. They look like buttons still. Okay, this kind of effect is there. To make them flat on the page, use border none. Now let's go and check. See, they appear flat on the screen, on the page. Now when we click on this button, what we need to do, we need to change its background color and text color, and we'll give some border. For that, what I'll do, I'll create another class. The class name is active button, and I'll change color to blue and the background color to white and border 2 pixels and color is blue and style is solid. Now what we'll do, when we load the page, we take this class and add it to the first button. When we that is our page default view. Okay, so go to here the class first button and add it here. Active button. Now save this one and let's go and check. See, when we load the page, this is how it looks. First button is in active mode. This is how we activate this button. Okay, now when we click on this button or this button, they also should appear like this. We'll do that from JavaScript. Okay, now go back to editor. When we are changing from this color to this color, we'll give some animation. For that, tab button, we'll use transition all and 0.2 seconds and ease in. This is the animation we use. Of course, we can't see it now. Later we'll see it. Now save this one. Finally, when we are on smaller screens, what we'll do, we'll access this button container and we'll change its direction. Here you can see flex direction to column. Then what will happen? Our buttons will appear one on top of another on vertical line. Okay, that's what we'll do. So I'll write media query here. I'm taking 700 pixels for mobiles, and here we'll access buttons container, and here simply we'll say flex direction to column. Now they appear on vertical line. Okay, save this one. Let's go and check. Change the screen size. See, this is how they look on small screens, less than 700 pixels. When we drag it to greater than 700 pixels, this is how they look. Okay, that's it about media query. Now just move on. I'll keep it last. Later we'll style this divs. You can see we have 3 divs, right? Tab content is the class name we have given to 3 divs. Okay, we'll access with this tab content class. We'll give display none. That means basically they should not appear on the page when we load the page. Okay, this is how. But first div should appear in relation to this button. Okay, when we click this button, that should appear, and it is also already clicked state. We made it as a clicked state. Okay, then we should show this div, first div. Now to show this div, I'll create another class, active tab content, and display here as block, because divs are basically block elements, right? Here what we did, all divs we display as none. That means they don't appear. Here what we are doing with this class, whoever have this class, that div will be appeared. Go to first div, this one here, put it active tab content. Now go to the browser. See, this is how it looks when we load the page. Okay, when we click this button and this button, we'll change its divs and we'll hide another 2 divs. Okay, we'll do it from JavaScript. Now go back to editor. Now select JavaScript file. This time select JavaScript file, Ctrl B to open file window, and click it here anywhere and select JavaScript file. Now we have accessed all elements which we required. Buttons container, that means this one, which contains all our buttons, and this buttons, all buttons with query selector all. Okay, we got all these buttons. This is a list of buttons particularly it's a node list. And finally we have all divs, that means these 3 divs with class name tab content. Okay, now you see we use tab content. Again we use query selector all to select all divs here. Now in this project we will discuss about event object and capture phase and bubbling phase and event object properties like target, current target and type, all these things in this project. First we will talk about event object. For that I'm going to select this first button, but we don't have a button, single button. This is a button collection, right? So we can select with index like array. It is not array, but we can select like this and add a event listener, and we are interested in click, and write a callback method. This is our callback method. Okay, actually this add event listener has another argument. If you want we can provide. Okay, it is true or false value like this. If you don't provide any value, that means it's false. We are going to come to this part later in this video, but just remember there is a third argument to add event listener. Now we will focus on this callback method. When this is going to be executed, whatever code we write here, it is going to be executed when click happens on this button, right? That is how it works. We can write a callback method, then whenever the event which we are interested here is click happens on this button, then this callback method will be called. Actually what happens, whenever not only click, any event happens, an event object will be created. Sometimes you might see here some argument name, event or e, whatever. It doesn't matter. This means whenever this click happens or any event happens, there will be an object created. Okay, and we can access that event via this default parameter. That means here you provide a name, then the event will be loaded here, this click, relatively click event. Okay, it is available to our function, this callback method. Here I'm giving event name. Now this event will be loaded to this variable. Okay, so now you see whenever an event happens on our page, event object will be created, and we can access that event via callback method when we provide this argument. Okay, now this event object contains so many useful properties. We'll write some console.log. First we'll write event, what it contains, and save this file. Let's go to browser. Here this first button we write callback method. First we'll open this with browser tools, console. Now click here. We are going to print event object. See, this is event object. Okay, it contains so many useful properties. One of them is target. Target means who raised this event. Here we are clicking on this button. That means this button raised the event. See, you can observe here. This button contains tab button and active button classes. Now this event object contains so many other properties also. Current target and type is what type of event it is. All these things. Now go back to browser. Here I'll use target first. Target means who raised the event. Go back to browser. Click. See, this button caused this event. Okay. Later we'll use event dot type. What type of event it is? This all information inside this event object, and it is available to callback method if you want. Again click. Type is click. The event type is click. Okay. Now later there is another property, event dot current target. Okay, this is also very useful. I will explain this later. Now click this one. See, this is current target. Okay, I will explain this later. Now finally we will print the element name. Okay, now we know event object contains who raised the event, right? Target is the element who raised this event, and it has a property called tag name. Now let's go and see button. Target name always return element name in uppercase. Okay, remember that one. Now go back to editor. What we have done here, we write a callback method for our button. Whenever click happens, we are going to, it is going to be executed, this method. Okay, and this callback method can have an argument. Okay, then whenever this method is going to be called, event object will be loaded here. Then we can use that event object for our own purposes. That's it about event object. Here you see this button raised this click event, and we are writing callback method, and it will be called whenever this click happens. Here we can write this callback method to its parent also, and we can listen this event. Here you see this is our button, right? Its parent is this button's container, and its parent is container, and it is inside body, it is inside HTML inside document inside window. This is the parent hierarchy. In this parent hierarchy, innermost element, that means button, can raise any event. Outermost parent, that means window, from window to this one, can listen to that events and write callback methods and react. React means they can write callback method, and the event object is available to all parent hierarchy. Now what we'll do, we'll take this parent, okay, because we already accessed this one here. We'll change it here. Now copy this one and delete this one. Paste it here. Now what we are doing, we took button's parent, that means this button's container, and we are trying to listen not only first button, all buttons. Whenever they are clicked, we are going to listen and react. That means we are going to write a callback method. We already did that one. See, this is from button's parent. We are writing this code. Now see what will happen. What is the target and what is the current target? Okay, observe that one. Now go back to browser. Here click any button, not necessarily first one. See the button. This is the target. Okay, button raised this event. Now see here, the div is current target. Okay, see current target. Now that means button is child of this div, right? And we are writing callback method from its parent div. Okay, this is a div. Now we can do this in JavaScript. The innermost child, that means button, can raise an event, and outermost child, outermost parent, that is window or document or body HTML, we can listen from those parent hierarchy. You may be thinking, why should we do this? Why can't we write a callback method straight away on button? Because it is very useful. I'll tell you why. Because see, assume we have 3 buttons here. Assume we have 100 buttons. Then we need to write a callback method for each button. Then there are going to be 100 callback methods. All these 100 callback methods sit inside our memory. That is performing inefficient. Instead of that, go to its parent like this div and write a callback method. Now you know event object. Now you know how to take target. That means who raised the event, and current target, and all these things we have in event object. We can take advantage and write accordingly. We'll talk about capture phase and bubbling phase. Here I'll write some code. Later I'll delete this one to explain this one. Now you see, I write some code to explain this capture phase and bubbling phase. See, find last one. Button container of 0 means the first button, and we wrote a callback method, right? And we write a third parameter here, third argument. It is true for all this true. Okay, when you see this true, how this callback methods, you can observe buttons container 0 contains inside this button container. Okay, these are all parents. This one container actually we don't have. I just used this name. Okay, we don't declare it here. To explain this one, I wrote it here straight away. And Document.body means body element. Document.document element means HTML element. It is inside document. The document inside window. Okay. This is the parent hierarchy of button container 0. Okay. I wrote third argument for all callback methods. Okay. Now, once you wrote this third argument true, that means it is in capture phase. That means this innermost button raise the event and first will execute this callback method. Outermost parent's callback method when you are on capture phase. Okay, that is the difference. And later this one, second one, later this one, until it reaches the target, then it will be executed. Okay, this is called capture phase. The order how these callback methods work is defined by how you declare the third argument. Okay, how you declare this third argument. If you put it here false for all, okay, false, 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 all, or if you don't put anything, that means two arguments. This is bubbling phase. Okay, bubbling phase means first innermost child. That means this button's container of 0. So callback method will execute first. Okay, remove this one. Remove this one. Okay, this is bubbling phase. Later its parent, this one, will execute. Remove this one. Now, if you remove or put false, both are same. Okay. The order is like this in bubbling phase. Innermost child to outermost parent. Capture phase means outermost parent to innermost child. Callback methods execute. That's it all about capture phase and bubbling phase. In this project, we don't really need to go with a particular phase because we don't need it. Now, I hope you understood this concept. It's important. It is important to know this bubbling phase and capture phase. Now, just move on. Now, what we'll do, we will listen this button clicks from this button container from now onwards. First, what we'll do, we will check whether the event coming from the buttons only or not. Okay. For that, if I'll write a if condition and the event, we know who clicked, who raised the event. Target, right? Target dot tag name. Tag name returns the element name in uppercase. Remember that one. Equals to, not equals to, not equals to. Okay, button. We are not interested in moving forward. Okay. Then return. This means if it is not button, I'll write some code here. This is not going to be executed. Okay, because we are only interested in button clicks. Okay, if it is not button, that means target.tag name not equals to button, return from this function, then this code will not execute. Okay, now to test this one, here we only have buttons, right? 3 buttons. I'll write another thing. I'll write another element, span, for testing purpose. Now save this one and save this file as well and go to browser. Now you see we have span here. When I click on span, we can't see that last console.log. When I click any of these buttons, see, this is test. Now go back to editor. We'll write another condition. This is just learning DOM. Okay, that's why I'm doing this. If event dot target dot class list. Okay, class list is an object and it contains method. So many methods. One of them is contains and tab button. This means event.target contains tab button. This if condition is going to be true. Okay. If not, just put it here a not. That means this whole statement is if event.target does not contain tab button, then what we need to do? We just return. Okay. Return from this function. Now here I'll write another button for testing, but button should have class called tab button, but this button does not have. So this code will not execute. Okay. When we click on this button. Okay. Let's go and check this one. Now you see we have button here and span here. Once we click span, log will not appear. Once we click on this button also, log will not appear. Now click any button which contains a button and it contains a tab button class. See, this log is here. Now go back to editor, remove this code. Now we'll write our actual code. Now we have tested what we are only interested in buttons, and that too, that button should contain tab button. Otherwise, this function will return. Now, first what we'll do, we'll take this all buttons, because this is a collection. Remember, we use query selector all, and we loop through this all buttons. We remove active button class from this buttons. Okay, whichever button contains that active button, we'll remove that one. For that, tab buttons dot for each button. Okay, now we'll check if button dot class list dot contains is the method. It will return true or false value. Here we check first whether this any button contains this active button class or not. This one. Okay, if any button contains, first we'll remove from all buttons. Okay, then again button dot class list dot remove is the method. From that button, active button. Here I did not write active button. Okay, first we'll remove from all buttons. Later what we'll do, we'll add to the button which button we clicked. Basically, how do we know that? We know that because event dot target dot class list dot add is the method. Add active button. Now let's go and check. Now this is the default page view. Now I'm clicking on this button, so this get highlighted like this. This one. Now go back to editor, remove this span and button. We don't need this anymore. Now what we will do, the same way how we access all buttons, the same way we'll access all divs, all three divs. Later, which div contains this active tab content, we'll remove from that div. Okay, because whatever contains this class is visible. First we will remove from all divs. For that, we have div collection here, tab contents. Okay, we already accessed this one. Now tab contents dot for each tab content. Again write if condition, if tab content dot class list dot contains is the method. Whichever div contains active tab whichever contains this class, we are going to remove from that div. Okay, then tab content dot class list dot remove active tab content. That's it. Now save this file. Let's go and check. Here wherever I click, these all divs are invisible. See, now in order to show each div for each button, let's go to editor. Here I'll drag this little bit. If you observe the buttons, we gave custom attribute called for each button. See here with the data dash, see ID, custom attribute. This is a keyword. Okay, now we give tab 1, and for second button tab 2, and third button tab 3. Okay, like this. For divs we give IDs tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, like that. Okay, because whenever we click on a button, we know that event target will return the button. Later we will access this custom attribute. Let's do that one. I'll write it here, console.log. How do we access this custom attributes? Very easy. First thing, event.target, we know the button, right? Later data set is the object which contains all attributes. Okay, not necessarily one. How many you want, you can write for one element. Later, these are all in a collection of this object. Okay, dataset dot id. See, this is how we access the custom attribute with the dataset object and attribute name, ignoring data dash. Okay, here you can see data dash I ignored. Okay, that is a keyword. Later part is attribute name and this one is attribute value. Now what we'll do, we'll print this one. Let's go and do that. Now we can observe, see, I clicked the second button, data attribute value is tab 2. Okay, similarly we have divs with those IDs, right? Tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. Well, let's click all buttons and check this data set ID value. First button, okay, see, tab 1, second button, tab 2, third button, tab 3. Okay, this is a custom attribute value. Now what we'll do, with the same names we have divs. Okay, so for now we hide all divs. What we'll do, we give this value, this tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, whenever we click, to divs, okay, to appear on the screen. Let's go and do that. Now here, first we need to access all divs. For that, tab contents dot for each and tab content, each one. Now we'll check if tab content, that means div dot id, this is regular id. Okay, this div's id, this one, this div with this class name and id is the attribute. Okay, id here we'll check equals to event dot target dot dataset dot id. If it matches with this id, show this div. To show this div, what we do here, you can observe, we add simply this active tab content class. Okay, now tab content dot class list dot add active tab content, like this. I'll drag this one a little bit. Now when we click, we are accessing actually the data attribute, sorry, custom attribute id, and we gave divs similar IDs. If it matches with that one, show only that div with the help of this class. Okay, let's go and check this one. Now I click here, see, tab 2 and tab 2, tab 3, tab 3. See, it's working. Now drag it little bit to see how it looks on mobile. This is how it looks on mobile. Okay, that's it for today's video. I hope you like it. If you like it, please consider subscribing to my channel.